All right, today we're digging into a pretty massive trade war between the world's two largest democracies, the US and India. Now, there are billions of dollars at stake here, but the real fight, the real reason for the standoff, it's probably not what you think. Let's get into it.
So it all starts with this number, 50%. Yeah, a massive 50% tariff that the US slapped on Indian goods. You can think of it like an economic cannonball, right? It's designed to force a change. But a change to what exactly?
And you gotta ask, right? Why would the world's oldest and largest democracies get into a standoff like this? Well, the answer, it's not just about money. It's way deeper than that. We're talking history, national pride, and for India, one single red line that they will absolutely not cross.
Okay, so first up, this standoff. To really get what's going on now, we have to look back at the strategy that kicked this whole thing off. The story really starts with this chart. It's the US trade deficit. And wow, just look at it. It's in a league of its own, right? For the Trump administration, this wasn't just some abstract number. They saw it as a huge economic drain.
So the plan they came up with was pretty simple. Step 1, hit China with tariffs to try and shrink that deficit. Step 2, and this is the really crucial part, find a brand new, massive market for American stuff, especially for US farmers who were taking a hit. And the market they had in their sights? Yep, India.
But wait a second. What exactly are tariffs anyway? And where do they even come from? Let's do a quick history rewind.
Okay, so tariffs, in a nutshell, are just taxes on traded goods, and they have been around forever. We're talking everything from ancient permission fees to Britain's Calico Acts, which were all about protecting their own textile industry. But here's the thing, they can also go horribly wrong. Just look at the Smoot-Hawley tariff. A lot of economists will tell you that it actually made the Great Depression a whole lot worse.
And you know, that kind of chaos is exactly what led to this. After World War II, all the major players, including the US and India, got together and said, okay, never again. They created a global system. First, it was called GATT. Now we know it as the WTO. And the whole point was to create rules for trade, to make it predictable and stop those kinds of destructive tariff wars from happening. So that begs the question, right? If we have all these global rules, why is India so incredibly defensive about its markets? Well, the answer goes way back. It's tied to this really painful moment in their history, a kind of national wound from the 50s and 60s. It all started with this US program called Public Law 480. Now, on paper, it looked great. It was framed as a humanitarian mission. America had all this surplus wheat, India was facing famine, so the US would sell it to them. They even let them pay in their own currency. Sounds good, right? Well, there was a catch, because according to a lot of reports from back then, the quality of this aid wheat was awful. So bad, it was described as being fit for pigs, not people. You can just imagine the sense of humiliation. And the fallout from this was just devastating. All this cheap, frankly terrible wheat flooded the market and basically put local Indian farmers out of business. Before they knew it, India was depending on the US for 40% of its wheat. And then, the US used that dependency as a political lever, delaying shipments to pressure India's foreign policy. So for India, this wasn't just about economics. It became this core belief, burned into the national psyche. You can never, ever be dependent on another country for your food. It's a national security issue, period. And that painful memory, that historical wound, is exactly why, decades later, when the US came asking for access to its markets, India's answer when it came to agriculture was a hard no. It was a complete non-starter. First off, let's just talk about the basic math. This comparison really shows you the problem in a nutshell. You've got these heavily subsidized US farm products that can be sold for way cheaper than what Indian farmers can manage. If you open the floodgates, it would be a total repeat of the 1960s. It would just wipe out millions of livelihoods. And then there's this other fear. The fear of getting locked into a cycle of dependency through technology. You've probably heard of this model, often called the Monsanto model. It works like this. First, you introduce these high-yield genetically modified seeds. Then, you patent not only the seeds, but also the special chemical they need to grow. You make it illegal for farmers to save their own seeds for next year's crop. And then, once all the normal, local seeds have disappeared, you can start jacking up the price. And if there's one area that's even more sensitive, it's dairy. I mean, just think about this. 400 million people have their livelihoods tied to the dairy industry. The profit margins are already razor thin, so if cheaper, subsidized US milk came in, it could just decimate the entire sector. But it's not even just about the money. There are these really deep cultural and religious values at stake. For example, a common practice in the US is to use meat and bone meal in cattle feed. In India, for a huge portion of the population, that's just completely unacceptable. So when you add it all up, you get to this staggering number. Nearly half of India's population depends on agriculture in one way or another. So messing with that, it's not just an economic tweak. It's a recipe for a massive social and political crisis.
Okay, so all of that history and context brings us right here, to the current stalemate. It's a situation where neither side really feels like they can back down.
So here's the tit for tat, basically. The US puts on the pressure with these huge tariffs on Indian stuff like textiles and jewelry. India's response? A brick wall. An absolute no on opening up its agriculture and dairy markets. And then, as a countermove, it starts looking elsewhere, signing new free trade deals with other countries to try and make up for the losses. And make no mistake, the damage from those tariffs is real. This number right here, $48 billion, that's roughly the value of Indian trade that got hit by that 50% tariff. That's a huge economic blow, and it was designed to hurt. The whole point was to inflict enough pain to force India's hand. But at the end of the day, for any government in India, this quote just says it all. You know, you might have a lot of things on your agenda, but the farmers, they are always in the speeches. With hundreds of millions of voters connected to farming, it's just political suicide to do anything that harms them. Protecting agriculture isn't just a policy choice, it's about staying in power.
And that leaves us with one final big question. When you've got this high-stakes game of economic chicken playing out, with billions of dollars on the table, with national pride on the line, and the fate of literally millions of farmers hanging in the balance, who is going to blink first?